Have you ever felt that prickling sensation on the back of your neck? That feeling that someone, or something, is watching you from the shadows? I never used to believe in the supernatural. I was the skeptic, the rational one who always had a logical explanation for the things that go bump in the night. But after what happened in my apartment last October, I can't deny the truth anymore. There are things in this world, and beyond it, that we can't explain. If you're listening to this in bed right now, you might want to check that your feet are safely tucked under the blankets. Make sure your closet door is firmly shut. And whatever you do, don't look behind you. Because once you invite them in, they never truly leave. If my story makes your skin crawl or keeps you up at night, remember to hit like and subscribe. And leave a comment with your own supernatural experiences. I need to know if I'm really alone in this. Because sometimes I still feel those eyes on me, watching, waiting. Now, let me tell you what really happened when I tried to summon a demon. The story begins now. It started with a book, don't they all? I found it at Willow Creek Antiques in downtown Portland, a small, dusty shop wedged between a craft brewery and an artisanal coffee place. The kind of store tourists love and locals pretend not to. I was killing time before meeting my friend Sarah for lunch, browsing through shelves of forgotten treasures and overpriced junk. That's when I saw it. Tucked between a tarnished silver candelabra and a collection of vintage Coca-Cola bottles. An old, leather-bound book, the spine cracked with age, its pages yellowed. The title was embossed in faded gold lettering. Thresholds, a guide to the other side. "How much for this?" I asked the shopkeeper, a gray-haired woman with thick glasses and too many rings on her fingers. She glanced at the book, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something like fear flicker across her face. $20, she said finally. "But I wouldn't if I were you." I laughed. "Why not?" She shrugged, her bangles jingling. "Some books are better left unread, dear." Of course, that only made me want it more. I've always been that way. Tell me not to do something, and suddenly it's the only thing I can think about. My mom used to say it would be the death of me someday. Maybe she was right. I bought the book. $20 for a lifetime of regret. What a bargain. I forgot about it for a while after that. Tossed it onto my nightstand when I got home, where it sat gathering dust for weeks. Summer turned to fall, and October arrived with its pumpkin spice everything and Halloween decorations sprouting up like mushrooms after rain. I'd just gone through a bad breakup with my boyfriend of 3 years, Ryan. Found out he'd been cheating with his coworker, Melissa. Classic, right? So there I was, alone in my apartment in the Pearl District, nursing a glass of $2 Chuck and scrolling mindlessly through Instagram. Everyone was out at parties, posting stories of their perfect lives. And there was Ryan, already with his arm around Melissa at some bar downtown. I threw my phone across the couch. That's when I noticed the book again, sitting there on my nightstand, almost waiting. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the textured leather. Why not? I had nothing better to do, and I'd always had a thing for the occult, even if I didn't believe in it. So I settled in and started to read. Most of it was the usual stuff. Paranormal theories, accounts of hauntings, rituals for contacting the dead. I skimmed through, sipping my wine, occasionally snorting at the more ridiculous claims. But then I reached a chapter titled Summoning Entities. Something about it made me pause, made me read more carefully. The ritual described seemed simple enough. A circle of candles, a mirror, a few words spoken at midnight. Nothing too dramatic, no animal sacrifices or virgin blood. The book claimed it would open a doorway, allowing you to speak with a spirit from the other side. Not necessarily a demon, the book was careful to point that out, but an entity that existed beyond our world. What could go wrong? I said aloud to my empty apartment. My voice sounded strange, echoing off the walls. Looking back, I should have recognized that as the first warning, but I didn't. I checked the time. 11:23 p.m., close enough to midnight. The wine had gone to my head and the idea seemed amusing. A little Halloween fun, right? I wasn't even taking it seriously. Just something to distract me from thoughts of Ryan and Melissa and how pathetic my life had become. I gathered what I needed. 7 white candles from my emergency blackout kit. A handheld mirror from my bathroom. I cleared a space in the center of my living room, arranging the furniture against the walls. Then I set up the candles in a perfect circle and placed the mirror in the center. The ritual called for silence and solitude, so I turned off my phone. Switched off all the lights except for the candles. Their flames cast long dancing shadows across the walls, transforming my familiar apartment into something alien. Something waiting. At exactly midnight, I sat cross-legged in front of the mirror and began to recite the words from the book. Latin, I think, though I couldn't be sure. My high school Spanish was the closest I'd ever come to learning another language. Aperite portam, voco te veni aid me. Nothing happened, of course. What had I expected? I felt silly, sitting there on my hardwood floor surrounded by candles like some wannabe witch. I was about to blow them out and open a second bottle of wine when the flame of one candle stretched upward impossibly tall before settling back down. Then another did the same. Then another. Soon, all 7 flames were pulsing, growing and shrinking in perfect unison, like they were breathing. I told myself it was just a draft, that my heating system had kicked on, but the air in the apartment was completely still. Then the mirror began to cloud over, as if someone had breathed on it. But I hadn't moved, hadn't even exhaled. The cloudiness spread from the center outward, swirling like milk dropped into coffee. And in that swirling mist, I thought I saw something. A face? Not quite. More like the suggestion of features. 2 darker spots where eyes might be. A horizontal line that could have been a mouth. I leaned closer, my heart pounding in my chest, my rational mind searching for explanations even as a deeper, more primal part of me began to scream that something was very, very wrong. "Hello?" I whispered. Is someone there?" The mist in the mirror shifted. The not-quite face seemed to move closer to the surface, as if pressing against a thin membrane from the other side. And then, soft as a sigh, I heard it. "Hello, Lily." My name. It knew my name. But I hadn't told it my name. I scrambled backward, knocking over one of the candles. Hot wax splashed across my hand, but I barely felt it. My eyes were fixed on the mirror, where the mist was now pulsing in rhythm with the candle flames. In, out, like it was breathing. "What are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. The mirror mist twisted, almost like it was smiling. "A friend," it whispered. "Just a friend who's been waiting for you to call." And that's when all the candles went out at once, plunging my apartment into total darkness. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat on my couch until dawn, every light in my apartment blazing, jumping at every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains. I told myself I'd imagined it all, the wine, the breakup, the late hour, my mind playing tricks. But I knew better. Deep down, I knew. When morning finally came, I got ready for work in a daze. Teaching 3rd grade at Westland Elementary requires energy I didn't have. My students noticed. "Miss Fletcher, are you sick?" little Emma asked during math. "Your eyes look scary." Kids, so tactful. I made it through the day somehow, returning to my apartment at dusk. Everything looked normal. No mysterious mist, no whispering voices. Just my same old living room with its IKEA furniture and framed prints from Target. I had almost convinced myself that nothing had happened when I noticed the book on the coffee table. But I hadn't left it there, I was sure of it. I'd left it on my nightstand, hadn't I? I approached cautiously, as if it might suddenly sprout teeth and bite. The book was open to a page I hadn't seen before. "Once Invited," the heading read. They never leave. My hands trembled as I picked it up, scanning the text below. It explained that the ritual I'd performed wasn't just about communication, it was about invitation. I had opened a door, and something had come through. The text warned that the entity would begin to manifest in small ways at first. Objects moving, strange sounds, cold spots. But as it grew stronger, fed by fear and attention, it would become more. Do more. To banish the entity, the book explained, one must... But the rest of the page had been torn out, just gone. I flipped frantically through the book, searching for the missing information, but found nothing. Just that single, taunting paragraph, and then emptiness where the solution should have been. That night, it started. A soft tapping at my bedroom window. Tap, 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 rhythmic, like fingers. But I lived on the 8th floor. The sound of footsteps in my hallway when I was alone in the apartment. The television turning on by itself at 3:17 a.m., blaring static at full volume, waking me from a fitful sleep. And worst of all, the mirror. Every mirror in my apartment would fog over when I looked into it for too long, and in the mist, always just at the edge of perception, that suggestion of a face. Watching. Waiting. Days passed, then weeks. Halloween approached, but I barely noticed. I was exhausted, sleep-deprived, jumping at shadows. My friends started to worry. Sarah invited me out for coffee, studying my face with concern. "You look like hell, Lily," she said bluntly. "What's going on? Is it still about Ryan?" I laughed, a brittle sound that made the couple at the next table glance over. Ryan? God, I wish it was that simple. Then what? I considered telling her everything, about the book, the ritual, the thing in my apartment. But how could I? She'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was. "Just not sleeping well," I said instead. "Stress from work." Sarah didn't believe me. I could tell, but she didn't push it, and I was grateful. That night was the worst yet. I woke at exactly 3:17 a.m., it was always 3:17, to find every faucet in my apartment running full blast. Cold water streaming down the drains. The sound was deafening, like a waterfall inside my walls. I rushed from room to room, shutting them off, my bare feet splashing through puddles on the tile. When I reached the bathroom, I froze. Written in the condensation on my mirror, in a childish, uneven scrawl, were 3 words. "Still here, Lily." I ran. Didn't even grab my phone or shoes. Just fled my apartment in my pajamas, taking the stairs because I couldn't bear to be trapped in the elevator. I spent the rest of the night in the 24-hour Denny's down the street, shivering, ordering coffee after coffee until the waitress started giving me concerned looks. When dawn came, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live like this, couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. I needed help. I called in sick to work and headed to Willow Creek Antiques. The gray-haired woman was there, arranging a display of vintage cameras. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "It didn't work out well, did it?" she asked quietly. I stared at her, my exhaustion giving way to anger. "You knew. You knew what that book was." She sighed, removing her glasses to clean them on her cardigan. "I suspected. That's why I tried to warn you." "Well, your warning wasn't exactly clear," I snapped. "Now I've got something in my apartment, following me, watching me. And the page with the banishing ritual is missing." "Of course it is," she murmured. "They're clever that way. They remove the means of their undoing." "They? What are they?" She looked at me, her eyes suddenly seeming much older, much wiser than I'd first thought. "Hungry things," she said simply. "Things that feed on fear, on attention. The more frightened you are, the stronger they become." "How do I get rid of it?" She hesitated, glancing around the shop as if worried about being overheard. "Come back tonight, after closing. 8 o'clock. I might be able to help you, but I can't promise anything, you understand? Once invited, they never leave," I finished. Yeah, I got that part. As I turned to go, she called after me. Don't go back to your apartment, not until tonight. Stay in public places, and whatever you do, don't look in any mirrors. I spent the day wandering from coffee shop to bookstore to mall, always surrounded by people. Avoiding reflective surfaces became an exhausting game. Shop windows, phone screens, even the polished metal of escalator handrails could show a distorted reflection. By the time 8 o'clock rolled around, I was a nervous wreck. The antique shop was dark when I arrived, the closed sign prominently displayed. But the door opened when I tried it. Inside, the shopkeeper had cleared a space in the center of the store. Candles burned on every surface, not just white ones like I'd used, but candles of every color: red, black, blue, green, purple, yellow, orange. The air was thick with the scent of incense, sage, and something else I couldn't identify. "Come in," she said, emerging from behind a curtain. "And close the door quickly." I did as she asked. "What is all this?" "Protection," she replied, "and preparation. What you're going to do isn't easy, and it isn't without risk." "What am I going to do?" She handed me a small cloth bag. "First, you're going to tell me exactly what happened. Every detail you can remember." So I did. I told her about the ritual, the mirror, the voice that knew my name, about the haunting that followed. With each word, her expression grew more grave. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "It's worse than I thought," she finally said. "You haven't just contacted an entity, you've invited in something specific, something that was waiting for an invitation." "What does that mean?" She began gathering items from around the shop. A small silver bell, a vial of clear liquid, a bundle of dried herbs. "It means that what's haunting you isn't random. It chose you, Lily, and I suspect it's been watching you for a very long time, waiting for an opportunity." A chill ran down my spine. "How do you know all this?" She paused, fixing me with that ancient gaze again. "Because I made the same mistake once, many years ago. That's how I recognized the book when you brought it to the counter." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a strange scar on her forearm, a perfect circle with a line through it. "I paid the price for my curiosity. I'm still paying it." She pressed the items she'd gathered into my hands. "Take these. Go back to your apartment. Create the same circle you made before. 7 white candles, the mirror in the center. But this time, pour this around the outside of the circle." She handed me the vial of clear liquid. "It's salt water, blessed by 7 different faiths. It creates a boundary they cannot cross. Then what? Then you must confront it, call it forth. But this time, don't ask it questions. Tell it to leave, command it. The herbs are to burn. The smoke will weaken it. The bell is to break its concentration if it tries to confuse you. Most importantly, you must not show fear. Fear is what it wants, what it feeds on." I clutched the items to my chest. "And if this doesn't work?" Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw the answer she wouldn't speak aloud. "Be careful, Lily," was all she said. "And remember, they lie. Whatever it tells you, whatever it offers or threatens, remember that everything it says is a lie." I left the shop feeling both more frightened and more resolved than before. I had a plan now, a way to fight back. As I walked to my apartment, the weight of the items in my bag somehow comforting, I realized something strange. For the first time in weeks, I couldn't feel it watching me. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning, yet somehow it felt different. Emptier, as if even the air had been sucked out, leaving a vacuum that pressed against my eardrums. Every sound was muffled. The traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator, even my own footsteps as I moved carefully through the rooms. It was waiting for me. I could feel it. I set up the ritual as the shopkeeper had instructed. 7 white candles in a circle, the mirror in the center. I poured the salt water in a perfect ring around the outside, my hands steadier than I expected. I laid out the herbs and the silver bell beside me, within easy reach. Then I sat in front of the mirror and waited for midnight. The minutes crawled by. 11:45, 11:50, 11:55. With each passing moment, the air in the apartment grew colder until I could see my breath misting in front of my face. The candle flames stood perfectly still despite the chill. No flickering, no dancing. Just 7 points of unwavering light in a darkening room. At exactly midnight, without me saying a word, the mirror began to cloud over. "You came back," a voice whispered, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I knew you would." I gripped the silver bell tightly, remembering the shopkeeper's words. "Don't show fear. Show yourself," I commanded, my voice remarkably steady. The mist in the mirror swirled faster, coalescing into something more substantial than before. Not just a suggestion of features now, but a face. A terrible, beautiful face with eyes like wells of darkness and a mouth that stretched too wide across a too pale visage. "As you wish, Lily," it said, and its voice was different now. Deeper, more resonant, filling the room like smoke. "Is this what you wanted to see?" I fought the urge to scramble away, to run and never look back. Instead, I reached for the bundle of herbs and set it alight with one of the candles. Fragrant smoke billowed upward, filling the room with a sharp, clean scent. The thing in the mirror hissed, its features momentarily blurring. "Tricks," it spat. "She gave you tricks and trinkets. They won't save you." "I command you to leave this place," I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. "You are not welcome here anymore." It laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Command me. You invited me, Lily. Opened the door and called me by name." "I didn't call you by any name." "Didn't you?" Its smile widened impossibly. "Aperite portam, vocote, veni, ad me. Open the gate. I call you, come to me." It tilted its head, a too fluid motion that made my stomach lurch. "You spoke the words. My name was within them, hidden, waiting. Just as I was waiting. Just as I've always been waiting. For you." A cold certainty settled over me. "You knew me before I found the book," I said, not a question. "Oh yes," it purred. "I've known you for a very long time, Lily Fletcher. Watched you grow up in that little house on Maple Street. Watched you struggle through high school, through college. Watched you fall in love with Ryan, and watched him betray you with Melissa." My blood turned to ice. "How?" "I've always been there. In the corners of your vision, in the shadows of your bedroom, in the reflections you glimpse but dismiss, waiting for you to notice me, to invite me in." "Why me?" It pressed closer to the surface of the mirror, its features becoming more defined, more human, yet still wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. "Because you're special, Lily. Because you have something I want." "What could I possibly have that you want?" Its eyes, those bottomless pits, seemed to stare directly into my soul. "Life," it whispered. "Warmth. Solidity. This world of yours, so bright, so real. My realm is less, shadows and whispers. But through you, I can feel the sun again, taste food, touch others." Its gaze flickered momentarily to the framed photo of Ryan and me on the wall. "I can be real again." A realization dawned, horrible in its implications. "You want to possess me." It didn't deny it, just smiled that too wide smile. "We could share," it suggested. "I wouldn't take everything. Just borrow your body sometimes. When you're sleeping, perhaps. You'd hardly notice." "No," I said firmly, tightening my grip on the bell. "Never." Its expression darkened. The candle flames suddenly stretched upward, reaching impossible heights before settling back down. "Then perhaps I'll just take it," it snarled. "Drive you out, make your shell my own." I rang the silver bell. The clear, pure tone cut through the room like a knife, and the thing in the mirror recoiled, its features momentarily dissolving into mist. "You will leave," I said, my voice growing stronger. "You will go back to where you came from and never return. And if I refuse?" It hissed, reforming. "What will you do, little Lily? The old woman didn't give you the full ritual, did she? Didn't tell you how to banish me completely, because she can't. Because no one can." It was right. The shopkeeper had given me tools to confront it, but not to destroy it. And the missing page from the book... Wait, the book. An idea formed, desperate, probably stupid, but the only chance I had. I kept my eyes on the mirror as I reached for the book, which I'd placed nearby. Maybe she didn't, I acknowledged. But maybe I don't need it. The entity's expression turned wary. "What are you doing?" I opened the book to the chapter on summoning, where the ritual was described. "You said it yourself. Your name was hidden in the words I spoke. The words that invited you in." I found the passage I was looking for. "So, what happens if I reverse them?" For the first time, I saw something like fear pass across its inhuman features. "That won't work," it said quickly. "You don't understand the forces you're playing with." But its reaction told me everything I needed to know. I began to recite the Latin words backward, stumbling over the unfamiliar syllables. "Emda inev et okov, matrop etirepa." The mirror began to vibrate, a high-pitched whine filling the air. The thing inside thrashed, its form elongating, distorting. "Stop!" it shrieked. "Stop now!" I continued, my voice growing louder. The candles around me flared brightly, their flames now a foot tall and pulsing in rhythm with my words. The saltwater circle began to glow with a pale blue light. The entity pressed against the mirror's surface, its face contorted with rage and fear. "If you banish me, I'll take something with me," it threatened. "Something you love, something precious." I faltered for a moment, but then steeled myself. "You're lying," I said, remembering the shopkeeper's warning. "That's all you do, lie." I spoke the final reversed word with all the force I could muster. The mirror cracked, a single spiderweb fracture spreading from the center outward. The thing inside screamed, a sound so full of hatred and malice that I felt it like a physical blow. And then silence. The candle flames returned to normal. The glow around the salt water faded. The mirror was just a mirror again, cracked but otherwise ordinary, reflecting only my own pale, exhausted face. It was gone. I could feel the difference in the air, in the sudden lightness of my chest. For the first time in weeks, I was alone in my apartment. I carefully gathered up the ritual items, my hands shaking with relief and residual fear. The herbs had burned down to ash. The salt water had evaporated, leaving a faint white ring on my hardwood floor. The silver bell, when I touched it, was ice cold. As I picked up the cracked mirror, intending to throw it away, I noticed something strange. A small dark spot on the back, like a burn mark. When I looked closer, I realized it was a symbol, the same symbol I'd seen on the shopkeeper's arm. A circle with a line through it. What did it mean? Was it a sign that the entity was truly gone? Or something else? I didn't know. But as I crawled into bed that night, exhausted beyond measure but finally, blessedly alone, I made a promise to myself. No more occult books, no more rituals, no more opening doors to places I didn't understand. Some thresholds, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Some invitations, once extended, can never be fully withdrawn. And some entities, once they know your name, never truly forget it. 3 months have passed since that night. Winter has settled over Portland, transforming the city with a rare blanket of snow. Life has returned to something resembling normalcy. I still teach 3rd grade at Westland Elementary. I've started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there. I even spoke to Ryan at a mutual friend's holiday party. It didn't hurt as much as I expected. On the surface, everything is fine. Better than fine. Without the haunting, without the constant fear and exhaustion, I've flourished. My apartment feels like home again. I sleep through the night without waking at 3:17 a.m. to find faucets running or messages on mirrors. But sometimes I still feel it. A prickling on the back of my neck in an empty room. A shadow glimpsed from the corner of my eye, gone when I turn to look. The sense that, in certain reflective surfaces, a shop window, a puddle after rain, the screen of my phone when it goes dark, something is watching me from the other side. I went back to Willow Creek Antiques once, about a month after the confrontation. The shop was closed, a for lease sign in the window. When I asked the neighboring businesses about the gray-haired woman, they looked at me strangely. That place has been empty for at least 6 months, the barista at the coffee shop told me. Maybe longer. I still have the symbol, the circle with the line through it, tattooed on my inner wrist. Got it the day after the shop disappeared. A reminder, a warning, maybe a protection. I'm not sure. The book is gone. I burned it the night after the confrontation, page by page, watching the flames consume the yellowed paper, the faded ink, the secrets it contained. But sometimes I wonder if that was enough. If knowledge, once gained, can ever truly be destroyed. Last week, Emma, my most perceptive student, noticed me glancing over my shoulder during class. "What are you looking at, Miss Fletcher?" she asked. "Nothing," I said automatically. "Just thought I heard something." She studied me with those solemn 8-year-old eyes. "Is it your shadow friend?" My blood ran cold. "My what?" "The shadow that follows you sometimes," she said matter-of-factly. "I see it too, behind you, watching." I made myself smile, made myself speak calmly as the other students looked up with interest. "There's no such thing as shadow friends, Emma. Just our imagination playing tricks on us." She shrugged, already losing interest as children do, if you say so. That night, I checked every mirror in my apartment, every reflective surface. Nothing. No mist, no face, no whispering voice. But as I finally settled into bed, my phone screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Still here, Lily." I blocked the number immediately, changed all my passwords, checked all my doors and windows twice, told myself it was a prank, a coincidence, anything but what I feared. But deep down, I know the truth. The shopkeeper tried to warn me. The book tried to warn me. Even the entity itself told me, once invited, they never leave. Not completely, not forever. They just wait for another opportunity, another moment of weakness, another door left ajar. So I remain vigilant. I avoid mirrors when I can. I keep the lights on a little longer each night. I've learned to live with the watching, the waiting, to accept that some decisions can't be undone, only endured. And if you're listening to this, if my story has kept you awake or made you glance uneasily at your own mirrors, then perhaps you understand now. Perhaps you'll be more careful than I was. Perhaps you'll think twice before reading strange books or performing rituals you don't understand. Because the boundaries between worlds are thinner than we think. The doors swing both ways. And sometimes, what we invite in never leaves. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences with the unexplained. I need to know if anyone else has seen the signs, felt the watching, the circle with the line through it, the whispers at 3:17 a.m., the messages that appear and disappear. Are any of you out there like me? Have any of you also opened doors that can't be closed? I need to know, because sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, I wonder if it's spreading. If what I invited into my world is finding new hosts, new victims, new doors to slip through. And sometimes when I catch my reflection unawares, I see my smile stretch just a little too wide. My eyes darken just a little too much. And I wonder, am I still alone in my body? Or did it find another way in after all? Sleep tight, everyone, and whatever you do, Don't look in the mirror at 3:17 a.m. You never know who might be looking back. Story number 2. Hey there, night owls and insomnia warriors. Before we dive into tonight's story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever woken up at 3:17 a.m. exactly, for no reason at all? That specific time? When the world feels wrong somehow. And have you ever felt like someone was watching you from the corner of your bedroom, but when you look, nothing's there? Just shadows playing tricks. Or are they tricks? If you've experienced this, you're not alone. And if you haven't, well, after hearing my story, you might start to. So get comfortable, but not too comfortable. Make sure your doors are locked, your windows are secure, and maybe, just maybe, leave a light on. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And I'm still not sure if it's over. If you enjoy this tale of terror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And please leave a comment below telling me if you've ever experienced anything like what you're about to hear. Your support helps keep these nightmares coming. Now, let's begin our story. It started 3 months ago, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday in October. The kind of fall evening in suburban Pennsylvania, where nothing exceptional should happen. The leaves had just started to change, painting my neighborhood in warm oranges and reds. I remember because I'd spent the afternoon raking my front yard, the scent of earth and decay clinging to my clothes. I'm Kate Sullivan, 32, divorced, working from home as a graphic designer. Nothing special about me or my life, just an average woman living in an average colonial-style house on Maple Street. The kind with shutters that need painting and gutters that always clog in the fall. A mortgage that's just within my budget, and neighbors who wave but don't really talk much. That night, I'd fallen asleep watching some forgettable crime drama on Netflix. The usual routine, nothing out of the ordinary, until I found myself in a dream that felt different. In the dream, I was standing in my own kitchen, but it wasn't quite right. The colors were muted, like someone had dialed down the saturation of the world, and there was a woman sitting at my table. A woman I had never seen before. She had long, dark hair that fell past her shoulders in loose waves, pale skin that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light, and eyes so dark they seemed to pull you in. She wore a simple white dress, old-fashioned, with lace at the collar and wrists. "Hello, Kate," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I've been waiting for you." I wasn't afraid, not yet. Dreams are strange like that. You accept the impossible. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled, and something about that smile sent a chill down my spine. "You'll come to know me well enough," she said. "I've chosen your house, your life." I woke up with a start. Heart pounding, covered in sweat. The TV was still on, casting blue light across my living room. 3:17 a.m., the clock on my cable box read. Just a dream, I told myself. Just a strange, vivid dream. I got up, got a glass of water, tried to shake off the unease that clung to me like cobwebs. My house felt different somehow, colder, as if someone had opened all the windows while I slept. But everything was locked tight. I checked twice. The next day, I almost forgot about it. Almost. But as I made coffee that morning, I found myself glancing at the kitchen table, half expecting to see her sitting there. The woman from my dream. That night, she came again. This time, she was in my bedroom, sitting at the foot of my bed, watching me sleep. "You have a lovely home, Kate," she said when I became aware of her presence. "I can see why you chose it. All these empty rooms, so much space for just one person." "This is just a dream," I said firmly. "You're not real." Her smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too white, too perfect. "Are you certain?" Dreams and reality, the border between them is thinner than most people realize. I forced myself to wake up, and there it was again. 3:17 a.m., exactly the same time. This pattern continued for a week, every night the same woman appearing in different rooms of my house. Sometimes she would just watch me. Sometimes she would speak, always in that soft, melodious voice that somehow scared me more than if she had screamed. "I lived here once," she told me on the third night, as she stood by my bathroom mirror, brushing her long dark hair with my brush. "Long before you, before this house was even built." "What do you want?" I asked her. "Company," she said simply. "It gets lonely. Being forgotten." By the seventh night, I was afraid to sleep. I kept myself awake with coffee and horror movies, which, in retrospect, probably wasn't the best choice. But exhaustion won eventually, and I drifted off on the couch. This time she was different, angrier. Her eyes seemed darker, her skin paler. She stood over me, her hair hanging down, almost touching my face. "You're trying to avoid me, Kate," she whispered. "That isn't very neighborly of you." I tried to speak, but couldn't. My voice caught in my throat. For the first time, I felt truly terrified in her presence. "I think it's time we move our relationship forward," she said. "Time for me to visit when you're awake." I jolted awake, gasping for breath. 3:17 a.m., always 3:17, but this time something was different. The living room was cold, so cold I could see my breath forming clouds in the air, and there, on my coffee table, was my hairbrush, with long dark strands of hair tangled in the bristles. Hair that wasn't mine. I'm not ashamed to admit I slept at my friend Lisa's apartment the next night. I told her I had a plumbing issue, a half-truth at best. I didn't want to sound crazy, talking about a woman from my dreams leaving physical evidence behind. But as I lay on Lisa's uncomfortable pull-out couch staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about the brush, those long dark hairs entwined in the bristles. I'd thrown the brush away in the outside garbage bin, couldn't stand to look at it. That night, I didn't dream of the woman. Instead, I slept fitfully but dreamlessly, waking every hour to check the time. When 3:17 a.m. came and went without incident, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. So it was just the house, I thought. Something about being in my house triggered these dreams. The next day, I stopped by a local bookstore on my way home, a little place called Curious Pages, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing store in the historic district of my small Pennsylvania town, the kind of place with creaky wooden floors and that distinctive smell of old paper and dust. "Can I help you find something?" the owner asked. Dave was his name, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan that had seen better days. He'd owned the shop for decades, according to the locals. "I'm looking for books on dreams," I said hesitantly. "Or maybe local history?" His eyebrows rose slightly. "Interesting combination. Any specific area of local history?" I shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe stories about my neighborhood, Maple Street area?" Dave's expression changed subtly, a slight tightening around the eyes. "Maple Street has quite a history," he said carefully, "especially the older properties." That caught my attention. "What kind of history?" "The land your neighborhood sits on used to be part of the old Sullivan estate," he said, moving toward a section in the back of the store. "No relation to you, I assume?" I shook my head. "No, just a coincidence." The family had quite a tragic story. The daughter, Emily Sullivan, disappeared in 1887. Never found. He pulled out a book bound in faded green cloth. "There's a chapter about it in here, in our local history collection." My hands were shaking slightly as I took the book. "Emily Sullivan," I repeated. "What did she look like?" Dave shrugged. "There might be a photograph in there." The Sullivan family was wealthy enough to afford photography even back then. I bought the book and hurried home, feeling a strange mix of dread and curiosity. The sun was setting as I pulled into my driveway, casting long shadows across my front yard. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing by my bay window, a woman in white. But when I blinked, there was nothing there. Inside, my house felt different, colder, despite the heat being on. And there was a smell I couldn't place, like lilacs and something else, something earthy and old. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd first seen the woman in my dreams, and opened the book. It didn't take long to find the chapter on the Sullivan family. And there, on page 137, was a photograph. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. The woman in the faded sepia photograph was her. The woman from my dreams, Emily Sullivan. She wore the same white dress, had the same dark, wavy hair, the same penetrating eyes that seemed to look right through the camera and across time, right at me. According to the book, Emily had vanished on October 17, 1887. Her body was never found, though many suspected her fiancé, a man from a rival family who had been seen arguing with her the day she disappeared. The last person to see her alive reported that Emily had been upset, saying someone was watching her from the woods that used to cover the land where my house now stood. The date of her disappearance struck me like a physical blow. October 17th. I checked my phone's calendar. Today was October 17th, exactly 135 years after Emily Sullivan vanished, and it was getting dark. I couldn't stay in the house, not tonight. I packed an overnight bag, planning to go back to Lisa's, or maybe even get a hotel room. But as I reached for my car keys on the entryway table, they weren't there. I searched everywhere, coat pockets, purse, countertops, nowhere. It was as if they had simply vanished. My phone showed no service either. The bars that usually indicated my signal were gone, replaced by a no-service message. Outside, the wind had picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across my driveway. My car was there, tantalizingly close. But without the keys, a neighbor. I'd go to a neighbor. But as I looked up and down my street, I realized something terrifying. All the houses were dark, every single one. No porch lights, no warm glow from windows. It was as if the entire neighborhood had been evacuated, except for my house, which blazed with light from every window. As I stood on my front porch, the wind suddenly died. Complete stillness fell, and in that silence I heard it, from inside my house. The soft sound of a woman humming an old, unfamiliar tune. I stood frozen on my porch, heart hammering in my chest. The rational part of my brain was screaming to run, to get as far away from my house as possible. But where would I go? The street was dark and empty, and without my phone or keys, my options were limited. And there was something else. A terrible curiosity. Who or what was Emily Sullivan? Why was she haunting me? Why my house, built decades after she disappeared? So I did what any horror movie character would do. I went back inside. The humming stopped the moment my door closed behind me. Emily? My voice sounded small and uncertain in the quiet house. Emily Sullivan? I know who you are now. No response. Just the subtle creaking of an old house settling. I moved slowly through the entryway into the living room. Nothing. The kitchen was empty too, although I noticed the broken ceramic from my coffee mug had been cleaned up. No shards on the floor, no coffee stains. Upstairs. I had to check upstairs. Each step on the staircase seemed to groan under my weight, announcing my approach. The upstairs hallway was dark despite all the lights being on downstairs. As if the darkness was something physical here, something that consumed light. My bedroom door was closed. I never closed my bedroom door, never. Emily, please, I said, my hand resting on the doorknob. What do you want from me? The door swung open on its own, hinges protesting with a long, drawn-out creak. My bedroom was transformed. My modern furniture was gone, replaced by antique pieces. A 4-poster bed with a lace canopy, a vanity table with an oval mirror, a rocking chair by the window. And there she was, Emily Sullivan, sitting at the vanity, brushing her long dark hair with the same brush I'd thrown away. "You know my name now," she said, her reflection meeting my eyes in the mirror. "That's a start." I couldn't move, couldn't look away. "What do you want?" I managed to ask again. "Justice," she said simply. "Remembrance." "You disappeared," I said. "The book said you were never found." She turned to face me then, and her expression was sad, filled with a century of loneliness. They didn't look in the right place. A chill ran through me. Where should they have looked? "Here," she said. "Right here, under this very room." My bedroom stood where nothing had existed in 1887. Just empty woods on the edge of the Sullivan property. "I don't understand," I said. Emily rose from the vanity, moving toward me with that strange, fluid grace. "He built this house, you know. His family did, after they killed me." "Who killed you?" "The man who was supposed to love me. He was angry that I had broken our engagement. I had discovered what kind of man he truly was, you see. His cruelty, his darkness." I backed up a step. "What does this have to do with me? With my house?" "Your house." She laughed softly, the sound like breaking glass. "This was my land, Sullivan land, and now another Sullivan lives here. Don't you find that strange, that you would share my name, live on my land? There are no coincidences, Kate Sullivan." The implications hit me hard. Was I related to Emily somehow, a distant descendant of her family? "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice stronger now. "Find me," she said. "Find my remains. Let the truth be known." "How am I supposed to—" She cut me off with a gesture. "Look beneath the old oak. The foundations of this house cut right through it, but the roots remain. That's where he buried me. The old oak. My house had a massive oak tree in the backyard, one I'd been told was over 150 years old. Part of its root system extended towards the house, and I'd had problems with my foundation because of it." "Dawn is coming," Emily said, looking toward the window where the faintest lightening of the sky was visible. "I'll be watching, Kate Sullivan. Find me." And then she was gone. The antique furniture vanished with her, replaced by my own familiar belongings. My bedroom returned to normal, except for one thing. On my pillow lay an old-fashioned cameo brooch, tarnished with age. A piece of jewelry I'd never seen before. I picked it up with trembling fingers. Turning it over, I saw an inscription on the back. "To Emily, all my love, JWJW." According to the book, Emily's fiancé had been Jonathan Whitmore, a son of the family that later developed much of the area into residential neighborhoods, including mine. As if on cue, my bedside clock changed to 6 a.m., and my phone chimed with an incoming text. Service had returned. The sun was rising, but I knew this wasn't over. Emily would be back, and I had work to do before nightfall. The local historical society opened at 10 a.m. I was waiting outside the doors at 9:45, the cameo brooch heavy in my pocket. Emily's story heavy on my mind. I hadn't slept after my encounter with her, spending the early morning hours rereading the chapter on the Sullivan family and searching online for any additional information. Martha Jenkins, the elderly volunteer who ran the place, seemed surprised to see anyone so early. "Well, hello there. You're certainly eager. Researching a school project?" "Family history," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "I'm interested in the Sullivan estate that used to be in my neighborhood." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, the Sullivans, one of our most prominent founding families. And such a tragic story with poor Emily." I spent hours going through their archives. Old newspapers, property records, personal correspondence that had been donated over the years. The more I read, the clearer the picture became, and the more disturbing. Jonathan Whitmore, Emily's fiancé, had indeed been the last person to see her alive. But I discovered something the book hadn't mentioned. After Emily's disappearance, Jonathan had quickly married another woman, the daughter of a business associate, and used her family's money to purchase the portion of Sullivan land where Emily had last been seen, the land where my house now stood. Within a year of her disappearance, construction had begun on the first Whitmore house on that property, a house that had burned down mysteriously in 1927 and been rebuilt by his son. That second house had been demolished in the 1970s when the land was subdivided for my current neighborhood. It was all too convenient, too suspicious. But it wasn't proof. As I was preparing to leave, Martha approached with one last folder. I just remembered we have some of Jonathan Whitmore's personal papers. His great-granddaughter donated them in the 1990s. Not many people look at them. Inside the folder was a small, leather-bound journal, Jonathan's private diary. Most entries were mundane business notes, but toward the back, several pages had been torn out, and on the page just before the missing section was a single line, dated October 16, 1887, the day before Emily disappeared. She threatens to expose me. I cannot allow this. My hands shook and I read those words. The next pages, what would have been October 17th and the days following, were gone, removed, hidden. I took photos of everything I could, thanked Martha, and headed home. The sun was already low in the sky. I had perhaps 2 hours before darkness fell completely. In my garage, I found an old shovel. I hadn't used it since planting a garden the previous spring. The oak tree stood massive and imposing in my backyard, its gnarled roots breaking through the soil in places. But which part extended under my house? I began digging near the foundation. The work was hard, the October ground already beginning to harden with the approach of winter. An hour passed, then another. Darkness fell completely. My arms ached, blisters formed and broke on my palms. But I kept digging. 3 feet down, my shovel hit something that wasn't root or rock. I fell to my knees, scraping away dirt with my hands. Fabric, rotted and disintegrated, but unmistakably fabric. And then, bone. I scrambled back, nearly falling into the hole I'd dug. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911 on my phone. I need to report remains, I managed to tell the dispatcher. Human remains. On my property. What followed was a blur. Police. Crime scene tape. Questions I could barely answer. How did I know to look there? A lucky guess, I said. Foundation problems with the old tree roots. I'd wanted to address the issue before winter. They didn't believe me. Not completely. But the preliminary examination confirmed what I already knew. The remains were old. Very old. A woman based on the size and structure of the bones. And there was something else. A tarnished wedding band with initials inside, ES plus JW Emily Sullivan. As the forensic team worked under bright lights in my backyard, I sat on my back porch, wrapped in a shock blanket someone had given me. It was nearly midnight when Detective Morris, the lead investigator, approached me. "Miss Sullivan," he said, sitting beside me. "We'll need to do more tests, but it appears these remains have been here for well over a century. Given the historical records of the area, well, this might actually be a significant historical find." I nodded numbly. Emily Sullivan. She disappeared in 1887. He gave me a curious look. "Yes, that's the working theory. How did you know exactly where to look?" Before I could answer, his radio crackled. They needed him back at the excavation site. They'd found something else. I followed him back to the edge of the dig. One of the forensic technicians held up a small object in a gloved hand. A knife. Ornate handle, the blade still showing traces of what might have been blood, preserved in the clay soil for 135 years. "There's an engraving on the handle," the technician said, angling it under the light. Initials: J.W. Jonathan Whitmore. Later that night, after the police had finally left, promising to return in the morning, I sat alone in my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd first seen Emily in my dreams. The house was quiet, peaceful even. The oppressive feeling that had haunted it for weeks was gone. 3:17 a.m. came and went, no sign of Emily, no cold spots, no whispers. As dawn broke, I found myself standing in my backyard, looking at the excavation site. Yellow police tape fluttered in the morning breeze. In the coming days, Emily's remains would be properly recovered, examined, and eventually laid to rest. Jonathan Whitmore's crime would be exposed. Too late for earthly justice, but perhaps not too late for the truth to be known. I felt her before I saw her, a presence at my side. But this time, there was no fear. Emily stood beside me, gazing at the place where her body had lain hidden for so long. She looked different now, more substantial, yet somehow more at peace. "Thank you," she said softly, "for listening, for believing. Are you free now?" I asked. Her smile was sad, but genuine. "Not yet, but soon. There's still the matter of justice." "The police know now," I said. "Everyone will know what he did to you." She turned to face me fully. "We're connected, you and I. More than you know. Look into your family history, Kate Sullivan. Follow the branches of your family tree back far enough, and you'll find me. A great aunt, removed by generations and forgotten. Until you came here, until you brought me justice." I wanted to ask her more, but she was already fading, becoming translucent in the morning light. "Will I see you again?" I called after her. Her voice came as if from a great distance. "Dreams are doorways, Kate. And family never truly leaves us. She was gone. But I knew, somehow, that she wasn't gone forever, and I knew what I had to do next. Trace my family history, find the connection between Emily Sullivan and myself, complete the circle, and maybe, just maybe, help lay to rest other restless spirits along the way. So, that's my story, friends. The woman who haunted my dreams and my life continues to haunt me still, but in a different way now. Emily's remains were positively identified through historical records and DNA testing. The cold case of her murder was officially solved, though her killer had escaped earthly justice long ago. As for me, I still live in the same house, still wake occasionally at 3:17 a.m. with the sense that I'm not alone, but it doesn't frighten me anymore. I've since discovered that I am indeed distantly related to Emily Sullivan, her brother's great-great-granddaughter. Which makes me wonder, how many of you might be living in houses with history you don't know? How many spirits might be trying to reach you through your dreams? If you've ever experienced something similar, or if this story resonated with you in some way, please let me know in the comments. Was it coincidence that brought me to that house, or something more powerful? What do you think? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more true experiences like mine. And remember, sometimes, when you feel like you're being watched, you are. Sweet dreams, everyone. Or should I say, pleasant nightmares. Story number 3. Have you ever felt that sensation of being watched? That prickle on the back of your neck when you're alone? Or at least, you thought you were alone? I never believed in the paranormal until I experienced something that changed my perspective forever. What I'm about to share with you happened last October in a small town in New England. I still get chills thinking about it. I've never told anyone the full story until now. If you're listening to this in bed, you might want to check that your doors are locked first, because once you hear what happened to me at the Blackwood Mansion, you'll never look at abandoned houses the same way again. The story begins now. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke as I drove through the winding roads of Millfield, Massachusetts. My phone GPS announced that I had arrived at my destination, though all I could see were dense trees lining the narrow road. I slowed my car, peering through the windshield for any sign of the turnoff my friend Ellie had mentioned. That's when I spotted it, a weathered stone pillar partially hidden by overgrown vegetation, marking what appeared to be a driveway. This can't be right, I muttered to myself. Checking the address, Ellie had texted me again, but there it was, 1428 Oak Ridge Lane. I turned onto the gravel drive, wincing as branches scraped against my car's paint. The driveway seemed to go on forever, winding deeper into the woods until the trees finally gave way to reveal Blackwood Mansion in all its decrepit glory. My heart sank. "Seriously, Ellie?" I whispered. The three-story Victorian loomed against the darkening sky, its once white paint now gray and peeling. Several windows were boarded up, while others reflected the fading sunlight like vacant eyes. This was supposed to be our weekend getaway. I parked beside Ellie's blue Subaru and another car I didn't recognize. At least I wasn't alone. I checked my phone. No signal. Perfect. The wooden steps of the front porch creaked under my weight as I approached the massive oak door. Before I could knock, it swung open, revealing Ellie's beaming face. "Alex, you made it!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "Isn't this place amazing?" "Amazing isn't exactly the word I'd use," I replied, glancing past her into the dimly lit foyer. Dusty crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and faded wallpaper peeled from the walls. I thought we were staying at a bed and breakfast. Ellie's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Change of plans. My cousin Dave is a real estate developer, and he just bought this place. We're the first to check it out before renovations start next month. Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone." I followed her through the grand foyer, our footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Despite the mansion's state of disrepair, I couldn't help but be impressed by its grandeur. The sweeping staircase, the ornate moldings, the enormous oil paintings of stern-faced strangers who seemed to watch our every move. "The electricity works, sort of," Ellie explained as she led me towards voices coming from what I assumed was the kitchen. "The water, too, but it comes out a bit rusty at first. And there's no heating, but we brought plenty of blankets and Dave set up some space heaters." In the kitchen, I met Dave, Ellie's cousin, a tall man with a businessman's handshake and calculating eyes. There was also a couple, Mike and Sarah, friends of Dave's who apparently shared his passion for urban exploration, which I quickly realized was a fancy term for trespassing in abandoned buildings. The Blackwood family built this place in 1887, Dave explained as he handed me a glass of wine. Old money from the lumber industry. The last family member died in the 1970s, and it's been empty ever since. Well, officially empty. "What does that mean?" I asked, already regretting my decision to come. Mike leaned forward with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Locals say someone, or something, still wanders the halls at night. There have been sightings of lights in the windows, voices when no one's here. People have gone missing after breaking in on dares." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Don't mind him. Mike's obsessed with ghost stories. But the real history is fascinating enough. The original owner, Joseph Blackwood, disappeared without a trace in 1902. His wife claimed he went to bed beside her one night and was simply gone in the morning. No doors or windows were open, nothing was stolen. He just vanished." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the kitchen. The wind outside had picked up, whistling through cracks in the window frames and making the old house groan like it was in pain. "So, which room is mine?" I asked, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. "Second floor, third door on the right," Ellie said. "I already put your bag up there. But first, let's explore a bit." The tour of the mansion revealed room after room of antique furniture draped in dusty sheets, forgotten treasures and personal belongings that seemed frozen in time. In one room, a study lined with bookshelves, I spotted a chess game mid-play, as if the players had just stepped away momentarily. In another, a child's bedroom remained untouched, vintage toys arranged neatly on shelves, a small dress laid out on the bed as if waiting for its owner to return. I shivered, unable to shake the feeling that we were intruding. "Most of these things will be auctioned off," Dave explained, noticing my discomfort. "The Historical Society has already claimed some items for the local museum." By the time we finished exploring the first and second floors, night had fallen completely. We returned to the kitchen where Sarah had prepared a simple dinner of pasta and salad. As we ate, Dave revealed the real reason for our weekend gathering. "I'm thinking of turning this place into a luxury hotel," he said, refilling our wine glasses. "But before I sink millions into renovations, I want to test the atmosphere. See if normal people, that's you guys, get a good vibe from it. Or if the whole haunted mansion thing is too overwhelming." "So, we're your guinea pigs?" I asked. Dave shrugged. "Market research, plus, I need you to document any unusual experiences, for liability reasons, of course." I caught Ellie's eye across the table, and she at least had the decency to look apologetic. "It'll be fun," she insisted. "Like a ghost hunting TV show, but real." After dinner, Mike suggested we play a game. As he retrieved an old wooden box from his bag, my stomach tightened with apprehension. "A spirit board? Really?" I groaned. "Not just any spirit board," Mike said, opening the box to reveal an ornate board with intricate symbols burned into the wood. This was custom-made for the Blackwood family in the early 1900s. After Joseph disappeared, his wife became obsessed with contacting him. I found it online from a collector who claims it belonged to the family. Sarah dimmed the lights while Mike set up candles around the kitchen table. I wanted to object, to go upstairs and lock myself in my room until morning, but something kept me rooted to my chair. Perhaps it was just the wine, or maybe it was the same morbid curiosity that makes people slow down to look at car accidents. As we placed our fingertips on the planchette, the candle flame suddenly bent sideways as if a draft had swept through the room, though I felt no movement of air. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees in an instant. "Is anyone there?" Mike asked, his voice reverberating in the silent kitchen. Nothing happened for several long moments. Then, slowly, the planchette began to move. YES. My heart pounded as I stared at the wooden planchette sliding across the board. Mike's eyes widened with excitement, while Sarah leaned forward, her face illuminated by the flickering candlelight. "Who are you?" Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The planchette moved again, more confidently this time. JOSEPH. "No way," I muttered, looking accusingly at Mike. "Who's moving it?" "Nobody," he insisted. "Everyone, keep your fingertips light." Ellie looked as skeptical as I felt, but Dave seemed genuinely intrigued. The planchette started moving again before anyone could ask another question. WARNING. A cold sensation spread across the back of my neck. I glanced over my shoulder at the kitchen doorway, suddenly certain someone was standing there watching us, but there was only darkness. "What are you warning us about, Joseph?" Mike asked. SHECOMESATMIDNIGHT. "Who comes at midnight?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly. The planchette jerked violently, nearly flying off the board as it spelled MARGARET and then NOTALONE. The candles sputtered, their flames dancing wildly as if caught in a strong breeze. A loud crash from upstairs made us all jump. The planchette flew off the table, clattering to the floor. "What was that?" Ellie whispered, clutching my arm. Dave stood up, trying to appear calm. "Probably just something fell over. Old houses settle all the time." "I'll go check," Mike volunteered, grabbing his phone for its flashlight. "I'll come with you," Dave said, not quite managing to hide the tremor in his voice. As they left the kitchen, Sarah began packing up the spirit board, her hands shaking slightly. "I think we've had enough of this for one night." Ellie nodded in agreement. "I didn't even believe in this stuff, but..." She didn't finish her sentence. We sat in tense silence until Mike and Dave returned a few minutes later. Mike's face was pale. "We couldn't find anything that fell," Dave reported. But what?" I prompted when he hesitated. Mike swallowed hard. "The door to the attic was open. Dave says he closed and locked it earlier because the steps aren't safe. Maybe you forgot," Sarah suggested. But Dave was already shaking his head. "I definitely locked it. And now the key is missing from my pocket." We all exchanged uneasy glances. I checked my watch, 11:23 p.m. The spirit board had mentioned midnight, and despite my skepticism, I couldn't help feeling a growing sense of dread. "I think I'm going to turn in," I announced, standing up. "Good idea," Ellie agreed quickly. "It's been a long day." We dispersed to our respective rooms, the mansion seeming larger and more oppressive in the darkness. My room was chilly despite the small space heater humming in the corner. I changed quickly into warm pajamas and slid under the covers of the antique four-poster bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin. Sleep eluded me as the old house creaked and moaned around me. Every sound, the tapping of a branch against the window, the settling of floorboards, the distant howl of wind through the chimney sent my imagination racing. I checked my phone, 11:47 p.m. Still no signal. Just as I was finally drifting off, a soft knock at my door jolted me back to alertness. "Hello?" I called out. The door creaked open slightly, and Ellie peeked in. "Sorry to bother you. Can I come in?" I sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. "Sure. What's up?" Ellie slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked pale and shaken. "I can't sleep. My room feels... wrong." "Wrong how?" I asked, making space for her to sit on the edge of the bed. "I keep hearing scratching in the walls," she whispered, "and I swear something is moving around in there. Plus, it's freezing, even with the heater on full blast." I was about to suggest she take one of the other empty bedrooms when we both froze at the sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging steps that paused outside my door. We stared at the doorknob, watching in horror as it slowly began to turn. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No response, but the doorknob stopped turning. The footsteps resumed, moving away down the hall. Ellie's grip on my arm tightened. That wasn't any of the others. The steps were all wrong. I slipped out of bed and crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. The footsteps had stopped, but now I heard what sounded like crying, a woman's soft, heartbroken sobs echoing from somewhere in the mansion. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Ellie nodded, her eyes wide. I checked my phone again, 11:58 p.m. "We should wake the others," I suggested, though the thought of venturing into the hallway filled me with dread. Before Ellie could respond, the temperature in the room plummeted. Our breath came out in visible puffs of condensation. The bedside lamp flickered, then went out, plunging us into darkness. "Alex?" Ellie's voice quavered beside me. "I'm here," I assured her, fumbling for my phone to use its flashlight. The screen showed 12 a.m. exactly before it too went dark. The battery suddenly drained. In the pitch blackness, I felt something brush past me, a cold current of air that carried the scent of lilacs and something else, something earthy and wrong. The sound of crying grew louder, now seeming to come from inside the room with us. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. "Is someone there?" A whisper directly in my ear made me freeze. "Help me find him!" I screamed, stumbling backward until I collided with Ellie. Together, we fumbled for the door and burst into the hallway, which was illuminated by moonlight streaming through a window at the end of the corridor. "What happened?" Dave appeared from his room, followed by Mike and Sarah. "There's someone, or something, in my room," I gasped. We both heard it. It spoke to me. Mike looked excited rather than frightened. "What did it say?" "Help me find him," I repeated, the words sending another chill down my spine. "Margaret looking for Joseph," Sarah whispered, just like the spirit board said. Dave, ever the pragmatist, insisted on checking my room. With all 5 of us crowded in the doorway, he flipped the light switch. Miraculously, it worked, revealing an empty room with nothing out of place. "The temperature," Ellie insisted. "It was freezing in here a minute ago." I stepped inside cautiously, noticing that the room was indeed now at a normal temperature. But something caught my eye. The antique vanity mirror across from the bed now had writing on it, visible in the condensation as if someone had traced letters with their finger. "Attic." We stood frozen, staring at the single word on the mirror. The condensation was already beginning to evaporate, the letters fading before our eyes. "I told you the attic door was open earlier," Mike said, his voice hushed with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Something wants us to go up there. Or someone is playing an elaborate prank," I countered, looking pointedly at him. But his surprise had seemed genuine, and I couldn't figure out how he could have written on the mirror without any of us seeing. Dave cleared his throat. "Look, there's probably a logical explanation for all of this, but I don't think any of us are going to sleep until we check it out." "You want to go to the attic now?" Sarah looked at him incredulously. "That's exactly what happens in horror movies right before everyone dies." "We'll go together," Ellie suggested, her voice stronger than I expected. "Safety in numbers, right?" I wanted to object, to suggest we all get in our cars and drive away from this place immediately. But curiosity was beginning to override my fear. What if there really was something supernatural happening here? Wouldn't I always wonder if I left without finding out? "Fine," I sighed. But we all stayed together, no splitting up. We gathered flashlights and made our way to the end of the 3rd-floor hallway where a narrow door led to the attic stairs. The padlock that Dave had used earlier hung open, the key still missing. "After you," Mike gestured to Dave, who hesitated before pushing the door open. The hinges creaked ominously as stale air wafted down from above. Our flashlight beams illuminated a steep, dust-covered staircase. These steps might not be stable, Dave warned as he began to climb, testing each stair before putting his full weight on it. We followed single file, the wooden steps groaning beneath us. The attic was cavernous, stretching the entire length of the mansion. Moonlight filtered through several small windows, casting long shadows across piles of furniture, trunks, and boxes. The accumulated possessions of generations. "What exactly are we looking for?" Sarah asked, her flashlight beam darting nervously from corner to corner. Before anyone could answer, a soft thump came from the far end of the attic. All our flashlights swung in that direction, revealing an old rocking chair moving gently back and forth as if someone had just vacated it. "Drafts," Dave muttered unconvincingly. "Old houses are full of them." We moved cautiously deeper into the attic, our flashlights revealing decades of forgotten items. Victorian clothing hung from a standing wardrobe with its doors ajar. Children's toys lay scattered as if abandoned mid-play, and stacks of yellowed newspapers and photographs covered a large wooden desk. "Guys, look at this," Mike called, directing his flashlight toward a section of wall that differed from the rest. While most of the attic had rough wooden planks for walls, this section was plastered over, the material cracked and discolored with age. "It looks newer than the rest of the attic," Ellie observed, running her fingers over the surface. "Or at least, different." I approached, noticing something odd about the dimensions. The room on the other side of this wall, it should extend further, based on the layout of the house. Dave nodded slowly. "You're right. There's missing space here." Mike was already tapping on the plaster, listening for hollow spots. There could be a hidden room back there. Old houses like this sometimes have secret spaces, priest holes, smuggling compartments, that sort of thing. Sarah, who had been examining the area around the plastered wall, suddenly gasped. The floor here. Look at these scratch marks. We all directed our flashlights downward. Deep grooves were carved into the wooden floorboards directly in front of the plaster wall, as if something heavy had been moved repeatedly across the floor. "Help me," Mike said, kneeling to run his fingers along the grooves. He began pushing against the wall, and to our collective surprise, a section moved slightly with a grinding sound. "It's a door," Dave realized, joining Mike in applying pressure. Together, they pushed harder, and with the groan of old hinges that hadn't moved in decades, a narrow doorway opened in the plaster. Stale, musty air rushed out, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of lilacs, the same scent I had noticed in my bedroom earlier. Our flashlight beams revealed a small room, no larger than a walk-in closet, its walls covered in faded floral wallpaper. "Ladies first," Mike joked weakly, but none of us laughed. Dave stepped through the doorway, ducking to avoid hitting his head. The rest of us followed cautiously, our flashlights illuminating a space that had clearly been arranged as a living area. There was a small cot with blankets neatly folded, a chamber pot in the corner, a shelf with a few books and personal items, and most disturbingly, dozens of photographs and newspaper clippings affixed to the walls. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, examining the yellowed newspaper headlines. "These are all about Joseph Blackwood's disappearance." I moved closer to the wall, my flashlight revealing article after article documenting the mysterious vanishing of the mansion's original owner. Between the news clippings were photographs, many showing a stern-looking man with a thick mustache whom I recognized from the portraits downstairs, presumably Joseph Blackwood. But there were other photos, too, showing a young woman with a somber expression and dark hair piled atop her head in the fashion of the early 1900s. "That must be Margaret," Ellie said, pointing to one of these photos. "Joseph's wife. But why would she have a hidden room up here?" I wondered aloud. "And why all these clippings about her husband's disappearance?" Dave had moved to a small writing desk in the corner, where an open journal lay surrounded by dried, crumbling flowers. Lilacs. "I think I found something," he said, carefully turning the brittle pages of the journal. We gathered around as Dave read aloud from the final entry, dated November 17th, 1902. "I can no longer bear the weight of my terrible secret. Tonight, I will join Joseph, as I should have done when I first discovered what happened to him. They will find this confession and know that I alone am responsible for his disappearance. The hidden chamber beneath the library floor was meant to be a temporary punishment, not his eternal prison. I never meant for him to die there, trapped and forgotten. But when I returned to release him after our argument, I found the key missing from my locket, stolen, I believe, by that wretched housemaid who always coveted my position. Without it, the trapdoor cannot be opened. For months, I have searched every inch of this cursed house, but the key remains lost. Joseph's cries have long since stopped, and I know he is gone from this world. Tonight, I shall take my final dose of laudanum and pray that God forgives what I cannot forgive in myself. Margaret Blackwood." A heavy silence fell over us as Dave finished reading. The implications of Margaret's confession were horrifying. She had imprisoned her husband in a hidden chamber and inadvertently caused his death. "There's a secret room under the library," Sarah finally whispered. "The library. That's directly below us," Mike realized. "First floor, east wing." We exchanged glances, all thinking the same thing. If Joseph Blackwood's remains were still sealed in a hidden chamber beneath the library floor, that would explain the haunting, the strange occurrences, the plea for help. "We need to find that chamber," Dave said, already heading for the hidden door. "If there really are human remains in this house, I need to know before renovations begin. And before we spend another night here," I added grimly. As we filed out of the hidden room, I paused, feeling an inexplicable urge to look back. For just a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the corner. A woman in a high-necked Victorian dress, her pale face streaked with tears. I blinked, and she was gone. The library was eerily quiet as we entered, our flashlights casting long shadows across the book-lined walls. Unlike the rest of the mansion, this room felt unnaturally still, as if the air itself was holding its breath. "According to Margaret's journal, there's a trapdoor somewhere beneath us," Dave said, his voice hushed despite himself. "Start looking for anything unusual in the flooring." We spread out, moving carefully across the ornate Persian rug that covered most of the hardwood floor. Mike and Sarah examined the bookshelves, checking for hidden mechanisms or secret passages, while Ellie and I began at opposite corners of the room, inspecting the floorboards for signs of a concealed entrance. The rug, Dave suddenly realized. It's probably under the rug. Together we rolled back the heavy carpet, revealing wide planks of dark wood beneath. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, but as we shone our flashlights across the surface, I noticed a subtle difference in one section near the center of the room. The wood grain didn't quite match, and the planks were arranged in a square pattern rather than the straight lines of the surrounding floor. "Here," I pointed, kneeling to examine the area more closely. "The wood is different." Dave joined me, running his fingers along the edges of the suspicious section. "There's a seam here. This has to be it." We all gathered around the roughly 5 by 5 foot square in the floor. Try as we might, we couldn't find any obvious way to open it. No handle, no visible latch or lock. "The journal mentioned a key," Sarah reminded us. "A key that Margaret kept in her locket. But she said it was stolen," Ellie added, her voice tense. "So even if we found the locking mechanism, we'd need the original key." Mike was examining the floor around the perimeter of the square. "Wait, what's this?" He pointed to a small brass circle embedded in the wood, almost invisible against the dark grain. It looked like nothing more than a decorative element, but upon closer inspection it clearly had a keyhole at its center. "That has to be it," Dave said. "But without the key, we could try to force it open," Mike suggested. "There might be tools in the garage or basement." I stood up, suddenly uncomfortable with the idea of breaking into the chamber. Maybe we should call someone first, the police or a historical society. If there really are remains down there, we could be disturbing a crime scene. "With what phone?" Sarah reminded me. "None of us have service, and the landline hasn't worked in decades." As we debated our next steps, the temperature in the room plummeted just as it had upstairs. Our breath clouded in front of us, and the flames in the oil lamps Dave had lit earlier flickered violently. "She's here," Ellie whispered, instinctively moving closer to me. A soft tinkling sound, like metal striking wood, drew our attention to the doorway. Something small and shiny arced through the air, landing with a clink on the floor near the trapdoor. A collective gasp escaped us as we realized what it was, a small, ornate key attached to a broken gold chain. "This is insane," I muttered. But Dave was already reaching for the key. "Wait!" Sarah grabbed his wrist. "What if this is exactly what she wants? For us to release whatever is down there?" "Or who?" Mike added quietly. Dave hesitated, key in hand. "I don't think we have a choice anymore. Whatever's happening won't stop until we see this through." With trembling fingers, he inserted the key into the brass lock. It fit perfectly, and with a soft click that seemed unnaturally loud in the silent room, the mechanism released. "Everyone step back," Dave instructed as he gripped the edge of the trapdoor where the key had unlocked a small, previously invisible handle. with a groan of protest from hinges that hadn't moved in over a century. The trapdoor lifted, releasing a cloud of dust and the smell of stale, enclosed air. Our flashlights revealed a narrow set of stone steps descending into darkness. The stairwell was barely wide enough for one person, the steps worn smooth from use long ago. "I'll go first," Dave volunteered, though his voice betrayed his fear. "Mike, you come last, everyone else in between." One by one, we descended into the earth beneath the mansion, the temperature dropping with each step. The space below was a low-ceilinged chamber, perhaps 15 feet square, with walls of fitted stone that reminded me of a wine cellar or dungeon. Except for a small wooden chair and table in the center, the room was empty. "There's nothing here," Sarah said, her relief palpable. But as our flashlights swept across the room, I noticed something in the far corner. A dark heap that at first appeared to be nothing more than a pile of rags. Dave approached it cautiously, directing his beam toward the mass. What we saw made my blood run cold. Beneath the tattered remains of what had once been fine clothing lay a skeleton, the bones yellowed with age. One hand stretched toward the stairs as if making a final desperate attempt to escape. "Joseph Blackwood," Mike whispered. "It has to be." I moved closer, noticing something clutched in the skeleton's other hand. A small object that glinted in the flashlight beam. Kneeling beside the remains, I could see it was a locket, an exact match to the broken chain from which the key had hung. He had the key all along, I realized aloud. Margaret thought the housemaid stole it, but Joseph had it. He must have grabbed it during their argument, maybe thinking he could lock her in instead, but she trapped him before he could use it. And, without the key, the trapdoor couldn't be opened from either side, Ellie added, her voice hollow. She inadvertently condemned him to die down here, and never knew he had the means of escape in his hand the whole time. A profound sadness settled over me as I imagined Joseph's final days, trapped in this windowless cell, the key to his freedom literally in his grasp, yet unable to reach the lock on the other side of the heavy trapdoor. And Margaret, searching desperately for a key that was already beyond her reach, eventually taking her own life out of guilt and grief. "We need to report this," Dave said, his real estate ambitions seemingly forgotten in the face of our grim discovery. "Joseph deserves a proper burial, and the Historical Society should document all of this." As we prepared to climb back up the narrow stairs, a sudden breeze swept through the underground chamber, impossible given that there were no windows or vents. The air carried the now familiar scent of lilacs, but this time it wasn't oppressive or frightening. It felt peaceful, almost grateful. My flashlight flickered, then went out completely. In the moment of total darkness before the others' lights found me, I saw them. 2 figures standing at the foot of the stairs, a man and a woman, their forms translucent and glowing with a soft bluish light. Joseph and Margaret Blackwood, their hands clasped together, their faces no longer showing pain or sorrow, but a profound relief. "Thank you," a woman's voice whispered, the same voice I'd heard in my bedroom hours earlier. Then the darkness lifted as the others' flashlights illuminated me, and the figures were gone. But the atmosphere in the chamber had changed. The oppressive weight that had hung over the entire mansion somehow lifted. "Did anyone else see that?" I asked, my voice shaking. From the expressions on their faces, I knew they had. We climbed the stairs in silence, each lost in our own thoughts about what we had witnessed. As we emerged from the trapdoor, dawn was breaking outside, pale light filtering through the library windows. The mansion felt different in the soft morning glow, still old and in need of repair, but no longer malevolent or threatening. "I don't think the Blackwoods will be bothering anyone anymore," Mike said quietly as we returned to the kitchen, emotionally and physically exhausted. Later that morning, after we'd managed a few hours of restless sleep, Dave made calls from town to report our discovery. Within days, Archaeologists and historians had documented the hidden chamber and Joseph Blackwood's remains. Margaret's journal provided the explanation that had been missing for over a century, solving one of the region's most enduring mysteries. As for the mansion, Dave decided against the hotel conversion. Instead, he donated the property to the Historical Society, who restored it as a museum dedicated to the Blackwood family history, including the tragic tale of Joseph and Margaret. I visited the mansion several times since that night. Tour guides now tell visitors about the secret chamber, Margaret's hidden attic room, and the spirit board that allegedly communicated with the dead. But they don't know what we experienced, the true reconciliation of two spirits trapped for generations by secrets and regret. Sometimes, when I walk the halls alone, I catch the faint scent of lilacs. Not menacing now, but comforting, like an old friend saying hello. And I know that while the mystery of the vanishing at Blackwood Mansion has been solved, some things will always remain beyond our understanding, lingering in that space between the world we know and the one we can only glimpse in moments of darkness when the veil between life and death grows thin. That's my story. What do you think happened at Blackwood Mansion? Was it truly haunted, or was there another explanation for what we experienced? Have you ever encountered something you couldn't explain? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of mystery and redemption, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories that explore the shadows between reality and the supernatural. Sweet dreams, dear listeners, and maybe check under your bed before you drift off to sleep tonight, just to be sure you're truly alone. Story number 4. Hey there, fellow night owls. Before I begin tonight's story, I need to warn you. What I'm about to share isn't just some made-up tale to help you drift off to sleep. This is my actual experience, something that still haunts me to this day. If you're listening to this right now, tucked in your bed with the lights off, you might want to reconsider. Or at the very least, maybe keep a light on. Because once you hear what happened to me in that old Victorian house on Maple Street, well, you might start noticing things in your own home that weren't there before. Have you ever felt like something was watching you? That prickle on the back of your neck when you're home alone? That feeling might just be your mind playing tricks on you. Or it might be something else entirely. Something that's been there all along, just waiting for you to notice it. If you're brave enough to hear my story, make sure to leave a comment below with your own unexplained experiences. And if this story keeps you up at night, well, don't say I didn't warn you. Subscribe now so you don't miss next week's tale. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened when I visited the abandoned lighthouse in Cape May. All right, now let's begin our story. I never should have moved into that haunted house. But at the time, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. All I saw was the price tag and the charming wraparound porch. My name is Ellie Morgan, and 6 months ago I was desperate for a fresh start. After my divorce from Mark, I couldn't stand to stay in our Boston apartment anymore. Every corner held memories I was trying to forget. So when I saw the listing for an affordable Victorian fixer-upper in the small town of Millfield, Connecticut, I jumped at the chance. The real estate agent, a woman named Diane with perfect hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, seemed almost too eager to close the deal. It's been on the market for a while, she admitted, as we walked through the creaking front door for the first time. The previous owners left, rather suddenly. She paused, adjusting her blazer. But that's why the price is so reasonable. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why a house this beautiful, with its ornate woodwork and stained glass windows, was selling for less than half the market value. But I was too caught up in the possibility of a new beginning to notice the warning signs. "I'll take it," I said, before we'd even finished the tour. 2 weeks later, I moved in with nothing but 2 suitcases and my cat Oscar, a fluffy orange Maine coon who'd been my only constant companion through the divorce. The house felt enormous and empty, my footsteps echoing off the hardwood floors as I explored what was now mine. The previous owners had left most of their furniture behind. Another detail that should have raised red flags. Who leaves a fully furnished home without taking anything? That first night, I slept in what I assumed had been the master bedroom, a large room on the second floor with tall windows overlooking the backyard. Oscar, usually the most relaxed cat you'd ever meet, refused to enter the room. He sat in the hallway, his yellow eyes fixed on something I couldn't see, his tail twitching nervously. I shrugged it off. Cats can be weird about new places, right? I left my bedroom door cracked open in case he changed his mind, then crawled into the antique four-poster bed. The mattress was surprisingly comfortable, and despite the unfamiliar surroundings, I fell asleep almost immediately. The dream came that very first night. I was standing in my new kitchen, but it looked different. The walls were covered in floral wallpaper instead of the chipped white paint I'd seen earlier. A woman stood at the sink with her back to me, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a dress that seemed from another era. "Hello?" I called out, but she didn't respond. I moved closer, reaching out to tap her shoulder. "Excuse me." As my fingers made contact, she turned, and I screamed. Where her face should have been was nothing but smooth, blank skin. I jerked awake, my heart pounding. The bedroom was dark, except for the faint glow of moonlight through the curtains. As my eyes adjusted, I became aware of a pressure on my chest. Something heavy was sitting there. "Oscar?" I whispered, reaching up to pet what I assumed was my cat. My hand touched something cold and damp. Definitely not cat fur. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Whatever was on my chest shifted slightly, pressing down harder. I couldn't see it in the darkness, but I could feel it, cold and heavy and wrong. With a burst of panicked energy, I flung myself sideways, tumbling off the bed and onto the floor. I scrambled to my feet and lunged for the light switch, my fingers trembling as I flipped it on. The room was empty. The bed was rumpled from my hasty exit, but there was nothing on it. No sign of whatever had been pressing down on me. Oscar sat in the doorway, his back arched, hissing at the empty bed. "You felt it too, didn't you?" I whispered to him, my voice shaking. I didn't get back to sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the living room with all the lights on. Oscar curled tensely in my lap until the first rays of dawn filtered through the windows. The next evening, I met one of my neighbors, a middle-aged woman named Helen who lived in the equally old but much better maintained Victorian next door. She brought over a plate of chocolate chip cookies and a seemingly genuine smile. As she was leaving, Helen paused at the front door and touched my arm gently. "Ellie, if you ever need anything, day or night, don't hesitate to come over. My porch light is always on." There was something in her tone, a weight to her words that suggested she wasn't just being neighborly. "Is there something I should know about this house, Helen?" I asked directly. She hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. "Every old house has its quirks," she finally said. "You'll figure out which ones you can live with." That night, I decided to sleep in one of the other bedrooms, the smallest one, which I'd planned to use as a home office. I slept deeply until exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone the moment I was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps on the stairs coming up from the first floor. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and paused, then slowly made their way down the hallway. Thump, 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 each step slow and measured as if whoever, or whatever, was out there was checking each room. They stopped right outside. I could see the shadow of feet in the gap beneath the door, and then a soft, plaintive sound that made my blood run cold. The cry of a child. "Mommy?" The voice was small, young, maybe 5 or 6 years old. "Mommy, I can't find you. Every instinct told me not to answer, not to move, not to breathe. That wasn't a child outside my door. I knew it with a bone-deep certainty that defied explanation. The doorknob turned slowly. I watched in horror as it rotated completely, but the door remained closed. I'd locked it before going to sleep, a new habit I'd already adopted in my new home. "Mommy, please, I'm scared." The child's voice broke on the last word, dissolving into quiet sobs that tugged at my heart despite my fear. Oscar growled low in his throat, the fur along his spine standing on end. The crying continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, then slowly faded away as the footsteps retreated down the hall, down the stairs, and into silence. I didn't move until morning, not even when my bladder screamed for relief, not even when my limbs cramped from staying in one position for too long. Only when sunlight streamed through the window did I finally unlock the door and peek out into the hallway. It was empty. Of course, it was empty. What had I expected to find? But as I stepped out, my bare foot landed in something wet. A small puddle, right where the child had stood. Water? I knelt to touch it and recoiled. Not water. It was too viscous, too cold. I ran to the bathroom and scrubbed my hand until the skin was raw, then sat on the edge of the tub, trying to calm my racing heart. I couldn't stay another night in this house. I needed to leave, now. But where would I go? I'd spent nearly all my savings on the down payment. I had no job yet, no friends in town, nowhere else to go. I was trapped, at least for now. That morning, I called the real estate agent Diane and demanded to know the house's history. She was evasive at first, insisting that she wasn't required by law to disclose anything that happened more than 3 years ago. But something did happen here, I pressed. "What aren't you telling me?" She sighed heavily. "Look, Miss Morgan, every house has a past. This one's is perhaps more colorful than most, but I assure you, there's nothing to be concerned about." "I heard a child crying last night," I said bluntly, "outside my bedroom door, but I live alone." A long silence followed. Then, "The Baker incident was over 40 years ago. Whatever you think you heard—" "Baker incident," I interrupted. "What Baker incident?" Another pause. "If you're really interested in the history, you might want to visit the local library. They have newspaper archives. Now, I really must go. I have an appointment." The library, of course. If something had happened in this house, there would be records. I spent the day at the Millfield Public Library, a quaint building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. The librarian, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses named Mr. Peabody, seemed unsurprised by my request to see archives related to my address. "The Baker House," he murmured, leading me to a room in the back filled with microfilm readers. "We get a new owner in here every few years looking for the same information." December 12th, 1978. That's when I found it. A front-page story with the headline, "Family of 4 found dead in Millfield home." According to the article, Joseph Baker, his wife Eleanor, and their children, James, 7, and Sarah, 4, were all found dead in what police initially ruled a murder-suicide. Joseph had reportedly been suffering from mental health issues, becoming increasingly paranoid in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. He told neighbors that something was in the house with them, something that whispered to him at night. The police theory was that he'd killed his family and then himself. But there were inconsistencies that the article glossed over, like the fact that Joseph's body was found in the basement with the door locked from the outside, or that all 4 bodies showed signs of having been immersed in water, despite being found in their beds. As I was preparing to leave, Mr. Peabody approached with one more box. "You might find this interesting as well," he said quietly. "It's from much earlier, 1902. This microfilm contained an article about the original Baker family, not Joseph's family, but his ancestors who had built the house. According to the yellowed newspaper, Elijah Baker's youngest daughter, Mary, had drowned in a well on the property. The well had subsequently been sealed and the washhouse above it converted into the basement of the main house. I left the library with my mind reeling. A drowned child. A family murdered. All in my house. The house where I'd heard a child crying for its mother in the middle of the night. That night, I armed myself with research on hauntings and decided to set up a makeshift recording device. My laptop with the camera on, positioned to view my bedroom door while I slept in the bed. I also placed a line of salt across my doorway, something I'd read about online as a way to keep spirits at bay. I must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing I knew I was jerking awake to the sound of water. Running water, like a bathtub being filled. It was coming from the bathroom attached to the master bedroom, which I'd been avoiding using. My phone showed 3:17 a.m., the exact same time I'd awakened the night before. The salt line across my doorway was intact, but Oscar was nowhere to be seen. My laptop was still recording, its little light blinking in the darkness. The sound of running water continued, along with something else now. A soft splashing, as if someone was playing in the tub. Against every instinct for self-preservation, I got out of bed and approached the bathroom door. It was ajar, a sliver of darkness visible through the crack. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely audible even to myself. The splashing stopped immediately, but the water continued to run. With trembling fingers, I pushed the door open and fumbled for the light switch. When the light flickered on, I screamed. The clawfoot tub was filled to the brim with dark water. Not clear water, but murky, as if filled with soil or something worse. And floating on the surface was Oscar's collar, the one with the little bell that usually jingled when he moved. But Oscar himself was nowhere to be seen. "Oscar," I called out, panic rising in my throat. "Oscar, where are you?" As if in response, a bubble rose to the surface of the dark water and popped, followed by another and another. Something was under there. I backed away from the tub, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had to find Oscar. I had to get out of this bathroom. As I turned to flee, the bathroom door slammed shut on its own. The light bulb burst, plunging me into darkness. And from the tub came a sound that will haunt me for the rest of my life. The sound of something heavy rising from the water. I fumbled blindly for the doorknob, twisting it desperately, but it wouldn't budge. Behind me, I heard wet footsteps on the tile floor, moving slowly toward me. "Please," I whimpered, tears streaming down my face. "Please, I just want to find my cat." A cold, wet hand touched the back of my neck. I screamed then, a full-throated, desperate sound, and threw myself against the door with all my strength. It gave way suddenly, sending me sprawling into the bedroom. I didn't look back. I scrambled to my feet and ran down the hallway, down the stairs, and out the front door into the cool night air. I didn't stop until I reached Helen's porch next door, where I pounded on her door, sobbing uncontrollably. Helen answered quickly, as if she'd been waiting up. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. "It started then," she said grimly. "I was afraid of this." "What started?" I demanded through my tears. "What's happening in that house? And where's Oscar?" She sat me down at her kitchen table and pressed a mug of tea into my trembling hands. "The Baker house doesn't like new owners," she said simply. "It never has, not since Mary drowned in the well. The little girl from 1902, but that was over a century ago." Helen nodded solemnly. "Grief and tragedy leave marks, Ellie, especially violent grief. And what happened to the Baker family in 1978, that left more than marks. It left open wounds." She explained that the local legend held that it wasn't Joseph Baker who killed his family, but the house itself. Or rather, what lived in the house. The spirit of Mary Baker, the drowned child, whose well was now part of the basement. Over decades, her presence had grown stronger, more malevolent. She didn't want a family in her house. She wanted her own family back. "But why me?" I asked. "I live alone. I'm not a threat to her." Helen looked at me with something like pity. "You're a woman, around the same age her mother would have been, and your name. What about my name? Ellie. It's short for Eleanor, isn't it? Just like Eleanor Baker, Mary's mother in the original family, and Eleanor Baker, the mother who died in 1978. A chill ran down my spine. That's just coincidence." Helen shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe the house has been waiting for you." I ended up sleeping on Helen's couch that night. But come morning, I knew I had to go back. Oscar might still be in the house somewhere, hiding. I couldn't abandon him. Helen tried to dissuade me. "At least, wait until daylight is stronger," she pleaded. "Don't go back at dawn. That's when the veil between worlds is still thin." But I was worried sick about Oscar. I thanked her for her hospitality and headed back to my house, promising to return if anything else happened. The house looked deceptively normal in the early morning light. Just a beautiful old Victorian with peeling paint and a slightly sagging porch. Nothing to suggest the horrors I'd experienced inside. "Oscar," I called as I cautiously entered. "Oscar, where are you, buddy?" A faint meowing answered me from upstairs. My heart leapt. He was alive. I took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound to the locked attic door, which now stood slightly ajar. The meowing continued, more desperate now, definitely coming from behind that partially open attic door. "I'm coming, Oscar," I called, approaching the door cautiously. I pushed the door open wider and peered up the narrow staircase. It was dark up there, the only light filtering through a small round window at the far end. "Oscar?" I called again. The answering meow was fainter this time, as if he was moving away from me, deeper into the attic. Using my phone's flashlight, I began to climb the creaking stairs, testing each one before putting my full weight on it. The attic was larger than I expected, running the full length of the house. Old furniture was draped with sheets, creating ghostly silhouettes in the dim light. Trunks and boxes were stacked against the walls, and the air was thick with dust and the musty smell of forgotten things. "Oscar, come on, buddy. Where are you?" Another meow, from behind a large wardrobe in the corner. I rounded the wardrobe and found nothing. No Oscar. Just an old rocking chair facing the wall, moving slightly, as if someone had just vacated it. The meowing came again, now from across the attic near the stairs. "Oscar?" I turned, confused and increasingly frightened. What I saw by the stairs made my blood freeze. A small dark figure stood there. Not my cat, a child, a little girl in an old-fashioned dress, her hair hanging in wet ropes around her face. She was blocking my exit. "You're not my mommy," she said, her voice the same one I'd heard outside my bedroom door. "You just look like her, but you're not her." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The girl's face was partially obscured by her wet hair, but what I could see of it was wrong somehow. Too pale, too smooth. "I want my real mommy," she continued, taking a step toward me. "The one who let me drown." I don't," I stammered, backing away until I bumped into the rocking chair, which was now still. "They all try to replace her," the girl said, her voice hardening. "All the new mommies. But they never stay, I make sure of that." My back pressed against the wall now. There was nowhere left to retreat. "Please," I whispered. "I just want my cat. I'll leave then, I promise." The girl tilted her head, a gesture that would have been cute in any other context. "Your cat is with all the other pets," she said simply. "In the well." My legs gave out then, and I slid down the wall to sit on the dusty floor. You killed Oscar?" She shook her head, wet droplets flinging from her hair. "Not me. The water. The The water takes what I want it to take. Tears streamed down my face. Why? He never hurt anyone. Because you love him, she replied, as if it was obvious. And now you're sad. Like my mommy was sad when I drowned, but she didn't love me enough to come find me. She just got a new baby instead. Through my grief and fear, a realization was forming. This wasn't just a vengeful spirit. This was a child. A deeply hurt, confused child who had been suffering for over a century. Mary, I said softly, using the name I'd learned from the newspaper articles. That's your name, isn't it? Mary Baker. She went very still. How do you know my name? I read about you, about what happened. I swallowed hard, choosing my next words carefully. It wasn't fair. What happened to you? It wasn't right. No, she agreed, it wasn't. And it wasn't fair what you did to Oscar either, I continued, a spark of anger giving me courage. Or to the Baker family in 1978. They didn't drown you. Your mother didn't drown you. It was an accident, wasn't it? Mary took another step toward me, and I could see her face more clearly now. It was the face of a normal little girl, except for her eyes, which were milky white, like those of a dead fish. You don't know anything, she hissed. You don't know what it's like to be forgotten, replaced, to be down in the dark water, calling and no one comes. Despite my terror, I felt a wave of pity for her. You're right. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to be left, to be replaced. I thought of my ex-husband who had moved on with someone new before our divorce was even finalized. It hurts. I know it hurts. Mary stopped her advance, watching me with those terrible eyes. If you know, then why are you here? This is my house. Mine and the water's. I took a shaky breath. Because I needed a place to start over. Just like you need someone to understand what happened to you. For a long moment we stared at each other, the living woman and the drowned child. Then Mary said, "The water is rising." As if on cue, I felt something cold and wet seeping through my jeans. I looked down to see water pooling on the attic floor, seemingly coming from nowhere. It always rises, Mary continued matter-of-factly. That's how it takes people. It takes them to the well. The water was up to my ankles now, icy cold and rising faster. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to remain seated, to maintain eye contact with Mary. Is that what you want, Mary? To drown me like you drowned? She considered this, twirling a strand of wet hair around her finger. I didn't want to drown. It was an accident. I was playing by the well and I fell. And no one came to help you, I said gently. The water reached my waist, soaking through my clothes, numbing my skin. I would freeze before I drowned at this rate. Mommy was with the new baby, Mary said, a catch in her ghostly voice. She didn't hear me calling. That must have been terrible, I said, meaning it, to call for help and have no one come. Mary nodded, and to my surprise, spectral tears mixed with the water dripping from her face. I just wanted my mommy. The water was up to my chest now. My teeth chattered from the cold. Mary, I said urgently, I'm not your mommy, and drowning me won't bring her back. It won't fix what happened to you. I know, she said simply, but it makes the loneliness stop. For a little while. I was going to die. I was going to drown in an attic, killed by the ghost of a child who died over a century ago. It was absurd. It was terrifying. But in my final moments, I thought not of myself, but of Mary, of the endless cycle of pain she was trapped in. I'm sorry, Mary, I whispered as the water reached my chin. I'm sorry no one saved you. Something flickered in those milky eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. No one's ever said that before, she said. So quietly, I almost didn't hear her over the rushing water. Then, just as the water was about to cover my mouth, it stopped rising. and slowly, ever so slowly, began to recede. Mary watched me with an unreadable expression as the water level dropped back down to my waist, my knees, my ankles, and finally disappeared altogether, leaving me soaked and shivering but alive. "Why?" I gasped, hardly daring to believe I'd been spared. Mary looked down at her bare feet. "Because you're the first one who didn't try to run, the first one who said sorry." I sat there, dripping wet and trembling, unsure what to say. What happens now?" She raised her head, those eerie eyes meeting mine. "I don't know. No one's ever stayed before." A plaintive meow interrupted our standoff, and to my utter shock, Oscar sauntered out from behind a trunk, completely dry and apparently unharmed. "Oscar!" I cried, opening my arms. He trotted over and butted his head against my hand, purring as if nothing unusual had happened. Mary watched us with a curious expression. "The water didn't want him after all," she said. "It only wanted to make you sad." I gathered Oscar into my arms, hugging him tightly. "Well, it worked. I was very sad and scared." "Are you going to leave now?" Mary asked, and for the first time she sounded like what she was, a small, lonely child. "Do you want me to leave?" She considered this for a long moment. "No," she finally said. I think I want you to stay. Even though I'm not your mommy? Even though," she twisted her hands together nervously, Maybe you could just be my friend instead." And that's how I came to an understanding with the ghost in my attic. A truce of sorts. Mary agreed to stop trying to drown me or scare me, and I agreed to acknowledge her, to talk to her, to not pretend she didn't exist like so many others had. Living with a ghost isn't easy, especially one with Mary's history. There are still nights when I wake to the sound of running water or childish giggles in empty rooms. Sometimes objects move on their own, or doors that I've left open are found closed, but the malevolence is gone, replaced by something more like mischief. Mary is, after all, still a child who's been alone for far too long. I did more research at the library with Mr. Peabody's help. We found records indicating that after Mary's death, her mother had indeed had another child, a boy, born almost exactly 9 months after Mary drowned. The family eventually moved away from Millfield, abandoning the house that held too many painful memories. As for the Baker family of 1978, I now believe they were victims of Mary's confusion and rage. Joseph Baker wasn't crazy when he claimed something was in the house with them. He was right. And when he tried to protect his family, to remove them from the house, Mary panicked. She'd already lost one family. She wasn't going to lose another. But she didn't understand that by keeping them there, by drowning them as she had drowned, she was ensuring they would leave her forever. One evening, as Mary and I sat in the attic where we usually talked, I asked her a question that had been on my mind. "Mary, do you know why you're still here? Why you haven't moved on to wherever people go after they die?" She considered this, rocking gently in her chair. I think it's because I was so angry for so long. And the water keeps me here. The well in the basement," I said. "Where you drowned." She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "My body is still down there. They looked for a while, but the well is deep, and the water can hide things it wants to keep." I felt sick at the thought. This child, this little girl, had not only drowned, but had been left in her watery grave, sealed away and forgotten. "No wonder you can't rest," I whispered. Over the next weeks, we worked together, the living woman and the ghost child, trying to find a path to peace. I researched child psychologists' approaches to helping kids process grief and anger, adapting them for my unique situation. We talked about Mary's feelings, about the hurt and betrayal she'd felt watching her family move on without her. And I talked to her about forgiveness. Not just forgiving her family for failing to find her, but forgiving herself for the pain she'd caused others. Slowly, the incidents lessened. The random puddles of water, the mysteriously running faucets, the cold spots. Mary seemed lighter somehow, more present when we talked, but less inclined to make her presence known in frightening ways. Then came the night of the thunderstorm, exactly 1 year after I'd moved into the house. The power went out, leaving me to navigate by candlelight. As the thunder crashed overhead, I made my way to the attic to check on Mary, who had always been frightened by storms. I found her in her rocking chair, but something was different. She was more transparent than usual, her edges blurring like watercolors in the rain. "Mary, are you okay?" She looked up at me with a peaceful expression I'd never seen before. "I think it's time," she said simply. "Time for what?" "To go, to move on." She stood from her chair, seeming to float rather than step. "I'm not angry anymore. And the water is letting me go." I felt a bittersweet pang. I'd grown fond of my ghost, despite everything. "Are you sure? Where will you go?" Mary smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. For a moment I could see her as she must have been in life. "I don't know, but I think Mommy might be waiting for me. And Papa, maybe even Thomas." Will I see you again?" She shook her head. "I don't think so, but that's okay." She moved toward me, leaving no wet footprints for the first time. "Thank you for listening, for not being afraid, for being my friend." Before I could respond, she reached out and touched my cheek with her small hand, cold, but not unpleasantly so. "Goodbye, Ellie." And then she was gone. Not in a flash of light or with a dramatic gesture, but simply fading away like morning mist, leaving behind only the faintest scent of rain. The house feels different now, lighter, more peaceful. The well in the basement remains sealed, but it's just a well now, not a prison. I've continued my renovations, making the old Victorian my own. Oscar has claimed the attic as his favorite napping spot, curling up in Mary's rocking chair as if keeping it warm for someone who will never return. I never should have moved into that haunted house. But I'm glad I did, because sometimes what looks like a haunting is really just a cry for help. And sometimes the ghosts that need laying to rest aren't only those of the dead, but those within ourselves as well. So if you're listening to this and wondering about the strange sounds in your own home, the unexplained footsteps, the doors that close on their own, the whispers in empty rooms, remember Mary's story. Remember that behind every haunting is a history. A person, not a monster. Someone who, perhaps, just needs to be heard. Sweet dreams, my friends. And if you enjoyed this true tale, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your own ghost stories in the comments below. Next week, I'll tell you about the abandoned lighthouse in Cape May, and the keeper who still tends the flame long after his death. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, sleep tight, and if you hear something in the night, maybe it's just someone trying to tell their story.